Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, good day, and salam. Welcome to another session with Guru Wonder. I am your host, Gurvinder Singh. There is a question in every Indian's mind, in fact, in the mind of many people across the world, that why did the British partition India? Well, this is a long story, but I will try to explain it as briefly as possible. India is a land which is rich in every aspect, and it therefore, like all rich lands, has been coveted by every power and wealth-hungry empire and despot. Empires came and they went, plundering what they could, but it was all in bits and pieces. It took the wily British to institutionalize the loot and the exploitation. India was the jewel of the crown of the British Empire, and every effort was made by the British government and the monarchy to exploit India and to retain the power over India, and not only that, to expand its hold over India. Nowadays, we talk about the great game. The great game nowadays means something else. But beginning in 1830, it was the rivalry between Russia and the British to control of all lands that could impact the British trade and power. In 1830, the Muslim Ottoman Empire was visibly in terminal decline, and the Russian Empire was in the ascendant. The British feared the invasion of India by Russia and the loss of its lucrative trade. After the British lost the two major Sikh wars, they eventually made Afghanistan into a buffer state between the two empires. Well, this is quite all right until World War II. America saw World War II as an opportunity to ascend to great and absolute power. And to do exactly that, first it had to allow Britain to expend all its resources before entering the war and during the war, and then assisting Britain. Then it had to dismantle the power of European colonialists, and thus informed Britain that it was not helping them to retain their colonies, but to free all people from injustice. So the Americans compelled a reluctant Britain by virtue of the Atlantic Charter. The links I have provided in the bottom of this video for people that might be interested. By virtue of the Atlantic Charter, the Americans were able to convince or compel the British to give up its colonies and set the lands and people free after the end of the Second World War. So as it was expected, the Allies won the war, but Britain fretted, and so did the Americans, that if they vacated India, nothing could stop a Soviet Union, strong and confident after the victory of the Second World War, from simply marching into and taking over India. So Britain, therefore, wanted to retain bases with troops and equipment in India to prevent such an eventuality. Both Jawaharlal Nehru, the new Prime Minister and the future Prime Minister, and Gandhi flatly turned down that request. They said the Indian people simply could not tolerate British troops on Indian soil after India had attained independence. But on the other hand, we had another very clever Muslim politician by the name of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. He was an astute man with a much better understanding of geopolitics and less idealistic than both Nehru and Gandhi. And he accepted the British request unconditionally. He offered the British carte blanche, unconditional support and basis if they appointed him as the first Prime Minister of India. There was, however, a slight problem. The problem was that Muhammad Ali Jinnah had virtually no say in the Indian Congress. So his opinion mattered little. Well, the problem was easily solved by the crafty British. Let's simply partition India into two. A Hindu majority secular India with Nehru as Prime Minister, and a Muslim majority Pakistan with Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. West Punjab, which is now Pakistan, is the area that is contiguous with Afghanistan. And Britain wanted to have their forces there and thus create an openly pro-British buffer state there. Now the die was cast, now to implement the plan. They sent Lord Mountbatten as the Viceroy to India, and the British government had mandated Mountbatten to grant India independence by July 1948. Everything was going as per plan. Suddenly, this plan was in danger. British intelligence had reliable information that Jinnah was suffering from tuberculosis and was unlikely to survive another year. The British had to bring the deadline forward. There was this question: what if the people of India and Pakistan, the Hindus, the Muslims and the Sikhs, reunited? After all, they had lived for millennia together, peacefully, coexisted peacefully. So there was not only to cause a division now, but to cause a partition in such a way that they would be permanent enemies, possibly forever. So they had to not only partition India, but they had to do it in such a manner that the two states would never be able to reconcile. So the British set up a demarcation boundary committee to two different boundary commissions. Each commission consisting of a small group of eminent lawyers who had access to no survey. They had neither knowledge, nor expertise, nor background information, nor did they have advisors for the great task of trisecting a subcontinent. The notorious demarcated line became known as the Radcliffe Line. Why is it called the Radcliffe Line? Cyril Radcliffe, an English lawyer, was summoned and assigned the job of trisecting most of India. He was appointed joint chairman of the two boundary commissions, one for Bengal and one for Punjab. It is shocking, further shocking, to know that Radcliffe had never visited India, never read about or studied India until he was assigned the task. He was given just 5 weeks to complete the assignment. He arrived on July 8th, 1947. He spent 2 weeks recovering from what is known as Delhi belly, which is a bad case of dysentery. Radcliffe's presence and his role was really to rubber stamp a plan that had already given him to him by the British authorities. What really happened, we shall never know, because after the report was made, Radcliffe destroyed all papers and records related with the decision of partition before he left India, and he never spoke about it for the rest of his life. Independence was granted to Pakistan on 14th of August 1947 and to India on the 15th of August 1947 at midnight. And the exact partition map of India was announced only on the 17th of August 1947 by the British. The former India was divided into 626 parts: India, East Pakistan, West Punjab, which is West Pakistan, and 623 independent kingdoms. It's quite easy to see that it was a disaster. Suddenly, many Indians found themselves on the wrong side of a border and now prey to violent gangs intent on spreading terror, looting, raping, and destroying. Both Indians and Pakistanis have huge amount of horror stories and a sea of tears to when they explain what happened. Mountbatten had promised law and order in the transaction, was now inactive and silent. He let India burn, which many suspect was deliberate, or maybe a case of gross incompetence. Nehru and Jinnah were busy strutting about in their new offices and are fully culpable for the neglect in their duty and allowing millions of people to die and even many more million lives to be destroyed, and to sow the seeds, poisonous seeds, which still affect both India and Pakistan even today. It appears that the British deliberately created this mess. One could say that they had mischievous intent to create enough long-lasting problems in the Indian subcontinent to pave the way for Britain's return to rule and dominate India once again, maybe sometime in the future, after India had burnt for a sufficient amount of time. Another clear indication of Britain's mischievous agenda was visible by the way how the British Army officer Major William Brown, the commandant of the Gilgit Scouts, supposedly went against the wishes of his own British government guidelines and staged a coup against the Maharaja of Kashmir. Brown hoisted the Pakistani flag on 2nd November 1947 and announced the accession of Gilgit to Pakistan. And what did and how was Major William Brown held accountable for his disobedience, for his impudence and disobeying the promise of the British government to Indian leaders? Brown was awarded the Order of the British Empire by a grateful British Crown in July 1948. Is this how one rewards somebody that goes against their own government or against the word of the British government? Many people like to believe that the independence is mainly because of the trio of Gandhi, Nehru, and Jinnah. That it's they that got India and Pakistan freedom. This opinion is fairly widespread, but it is grossly untrue. It disrespects the blood, sweat, and tears contributed by countless Indians and even some Britishers and foreigners. And the role of America was key. Though Mountbatten, the Viceroy of India, had time till July 1948 to complete the partition and grant India freedom, one could see that he had used a butcher's knife to tear out the soul of a people bound by centuries-old shared tradition, culture, and history. Subsequently, unclassified Russian documents reveal that the Russian government had no intent whatsoever to invade India. They had no plans whatsoever. Well, Pakistan subsequently became a key member, a partner in CENTO, led by the American and British in their fight against the Soviet Union. Pakistan received huge funds, technology, weapons, and all sorts of military, political, and economic benefits. A lot of that was turned against India and helped fester great problems and enmity between the two countries. As a result, Pakistan gradually evolved into a footstool or a pawn for any power that would pay it mercenary fees and give it international support for all its mischief and terrorist activities. Tragically, Pakistan never learned to exercise independence and remains independent only in name. Pakistan is now a failed pariah state, dependent only on a communist China, which is slowly sucking out the very vitality out of it. And India has spent a huge part of their resources and goodwill and finances and people in fighting or opposing the plans of Pakistan. Well, this is how thing is. India is now rising, and Pakistan, which had sold its soul, or Pakistan leaders that have sold their soul, are in very dire straits and is almost a failed state. So today I wish all Indians happy Independence Day and good wishes for the future. Thank you for joining me today. If you like this video, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I thank you and look forward to seeing you again on my channel. Namaste.